This is at Trustworthy Slav.
This is at Incognito, COH.
CRK Black Dot Compilled.
This is the Fed Post.
I was just sitting here the past minute just waiting on you to click record, and then I realized that I was the one in CRK's his account now. I was like, when is this gonna kick off, man?
It's kind of a metaphor for this whole thing.
Yeah, it's nice having that we're using CRK's account still, because it almost feels like he's still with us.
Yeah, dude. It seems like the last episode got pretty good reception on Patreon.
Yeah, I think it did all right, which is good for my personal ego and everything like that.
Yeah, yeah, I'm a valuable person still. Yeah, dude. That's feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how our just esoteric rants were gonna land, but I think at the end of the day, there were some good, solid takeaways there. And I think that really, I mean, if you're listening to our podcast, I don't think you're too worried about making sure, you're getting like intellectually gripping, cutting edge commentary.
Well, dude, it's interesting. It's interesting because, like, I don't know, the whole cynical numbers game of it is like a whole thing that I can't even say I'm really particularly like good at. And I'm not saying that as like a brag of how like virtuous I am, that I'm not good at being cynical. Like, I wish I was better at it. But just the way the numbers work, what is good, what isn't. I mean, like, I know that like our like UFO episode back in the day like performed terribly and all of that, but the thing that I mainly hear from people that actually interact with us is that they like, one of the main things is that they want us to do more shit like that, like the esoteric shit. And I've been thinking recently just about like, when you have guests on and you're kind of like, you're tapping into their audience a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like it helps with visibility and all of that, but like at the end of the day, like, a lot of the time, if you have somebody who's not already pretty similar to your audience, those people aren't really going to stay for the next couple of weeks. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I kind of like just like playing the hits, dude. Just playing the hits to the fucking people who were talking to us being like, record more schizo shit. And that's exactly what we're doing today.
Yes,
and
sir.
I'm pretty stoked on that.
Yeah, I threw out the idea. Okay, so I was thinking about this at work
Mhm.
because I have a good bit of time just to kind of be with my thoughts at work, which is nice because I'm doing more manual labor instead of stuff that involves dealing with people or talking or whatever. So I kind of just ruminate a little bit, and I was thinking about this general topic, and then I started thinking about iRobot.
Okay, wait, and what is this general topic, by the way, since we're, not just talking to each other now?
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, so I guess we could hard intro it here, but we were thinking about talking about, what, AI, machines, automation, robots, the whole in-game of technological demonology that's going on, essentially.
You got that right, brother. Well, and I think transhumanism.
Oh yeah, transhumanism's like the real meat of it.
Because to be honest, the way we were talking last episode too, I think that this would almost be kind of like a part 2 to it.
Oh sure,
talking about transhumanism and the rationalist worldview and mind-body dualism, and I think that AI is like the pop culture representation of transhumanism that most people are familiar with.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Except for, I mean, people are familiar with like the quote-unquote chip and brain kind of thing because it's been made into like almost like a rhetorical cudgel where you can just kind of like make fun of skeptical people by saying like, oh, they're not going to put a chip in your brain or whatever kind of thing.
It's to transhumanism as magnets on your arm is to anti-vaxxers.
Yeah, for real.
You just make everyone look like a fucking stupid farm animal who's skeptical of this stuff, and only point out the really, really silly examples, which, you know, I will say, to be fair, I'm open to the idea that the COVID vaccines magnetize you. I'm not shutting the door on that.
No,
but...
I mean, fuck, I don't know. I don't know enough about magnets to even begin to study that or determine that on my own. So,
well,
and I'm not taking
really.
these sickos' word for anything anymore. You know what I mean?
Dude, it's like I say, like, I'm just not in the habit of dismissing anything anymore.
Oh yeah, which is an interesting place to be though, because, and I feel like that's where I'm generally always been. Like I think that really anything that someone's thinking of earnestly could possibly be true, because I think that while I do believe in a single unitive reality, uh, I also believe that everyone has their own way of engaging with and perceiving that reality. And I believe that if we're talking about universal truths or whatever, I believe that the truth has multiple sides. And so I think that you can, approach it from many different angles. And that way I think that, it doesn't, fuck. I spaced out. I forgot what we were even talking about.
You're let's go, dude.
God damn it.
I did no. I think like you're talking about like you're talking about kind of a vague concept of there being kind of like many different.
Right? I was
And,
saying because of that, I'm leaving myself open to everything, like you were saying. Sorry.
Yeah,
I just lost that train of thought and then caught it as it was about to pull out the station.
Well, and I like to have my cake and eat it too with this point because I think that there is a static unitary truth, like you're saying, but I also see that those permutations that you're talking about too, and I think a good way that I like to look at it is just this seemingly infinite complexity to creation that God has created, where like it does have a static nature,
Mm-hmm.
but where faith comes in, and I'm speaking for myself, of course, where like faith comes in is that, I picked the word very carefully of just like there's seemingly infinite complexity,
Mm-hmm.
right? There is quite possibly like a way of conceiving of just the way things are in a static, there is a set nature to everything, but I will never know it. God would only know that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And from my perspective, my flawed perspective, there are many different ways of looking at it, some better than others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like, could a single blade of grass really comprehend the complexity of an entire field? No, but it is the thing that makes that very field, right? And so us being mere humans, objects, beings within this grand tapestry of life, we only can know our threads, really, and the threads that are next to us and what we can tie together from that. We don't necessarily know the full image of what's being, quilted together here. That is only in the hands of the creator, or the hands of, the overall unitive Godhead, the base reality. The only thing, when you're a single part of it, you contain the entirety within you, and you absolutely make up the entirety, but you cannot have a grasp on it because you yourself are looking as the object that is being observed rather than as someone who's observing. So you can't really ever really know. So that at the end of the day, no one single person can say, I have, complete knowledge of exactly the fundamental nature of reality. Because no one really ever will except for God. And so that's where faith comes in that you're talking about.
And I think I think we're opening up the throttle here pretty big right out of the gate, and so I'll just given that
Rein it
taste,
back in.
I'm gonna rein it back a little bit just to tie it back to. I'm like imagining CRK listening to this, just like grabbing his head, just like what the fuck, and I'm just gonna say
I'm gonna say there is a contemporary in the news reason for why we chose to talk about this.
Oh, of course.
Which was, of course, because we are, dependable members of a kind of commentariat, and we're always talking about current issues.
We're topical.
And topical. We're always topical. We're a topical podcast. This guy from Google, right, that I hadn't seen because I've been completely boomer pilled on my setting up a home stereo system for my TV. But we're talking about people at Google talking about a genuine sentient AI has been created in their language program bullshit. Guy got laid off for publicly posting conversations he had with this air quotes AI. Mm-hmm. And you sent me some articles about this. I read them all, banged through them.
Yeah, I only skimmed the ones that I sent you. To be fair, because I was looking at our message thread and I was like, man, I'm just sending him links of like Wall Street Journal, Washington Post. But while I don't necessarily think those are probably the best article to understand what occurred or just the nature of the actual subject at hand, I do think they're really good as far as telling on the general narrative, the broader discussion that's occurred from it, and also just kind of where these nib-rags are at on it,
Oh, sure. Well, oh man, this, I don't know if this is a thing that has really come up in the show, but that's basically how you should read all this shit always, right?
Of course.
Is that like, as far as like a delivery mechanism for like facts, journalism, I don't really like when people make the distinction. It was kind of like a Bernie leftist thing, to be like the corporate news, right? Like, I don't really like any journalists, right? Mm-hmm. I don't really take exception with any of them over the others and imply that there's like good ones. I don't really like that, the whole Matt Taibbi thing of being like back in the good old days of speaking truth to power. Like, I don't really buy that, right?
Yeah. Hard-nosed journalism with boots on the ground, really figuring out the real facts of the matter.
Yeah, no thanks. I mean, I'm sure that there's varying degrees of fuckedness, right? Like with anything, but as a general rule, I don't really go in for that stuff. But, as far as a vehicle for like actually like delivering facts, news articles are like incredibly flawed, mm-hmm. right? The thing that they're really demonstrating to you more than anything is basically just the framing device that the ruling class is putting around this event.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you're not really getting, I mean, this is the most retarded metaphor, but I'm going to use it because I can't think of anything else. Like, you're not really getting a good sense of like, the bowling lane, right? But you're getting a good sense of the bumpers on the edges of it, right?
Yeah, I was actually going to say you're not getting a good sense of like, the script or the dialogue, but you're getting a sense of who's at the play.
Sure.
So yeah, similar kind of things there. That was nice. Anyways, go on.
There we go. I mean, between those two flawed metaphors, a listener will come up with something good. But yeah, so I don't,
Well, you brought up the article, and then we kind of took a tangent there to talk about the media in general, which is, of course, a great thing to do to clarify that, because I think that, I don't know that we have discussed that before. We've kind of just taken it as a granted, like, this is just, of course.
Yes.
But it's good, I think, to kind of just clarify that.
Yeah, well, I think one of the reasons I specifically say that is just because, like, I don't do it as much anymore. But like, I think that there's like value in reading the news, right?
Yeah.
I do. I think that like it's a cold medium, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not really as expressive as television or film or things like that that are kind of trying to I mean, in a really simplified way, like kind of get a rise out of people a little bit more. I think that, you know, the written word can obviously do that and be evocative.
Yes.
But you can kind of have a little bit further of a distance from it. But importantly, I think to just always say, you know, this shit's bullshit, and I'm never gonna read this stuff. Like yes, of course, I'm never gonna pay for the New York Times because it's a fucking bullshit rag, right? But there's something useful to knowing.
Yeah, where are these sickos that are like trying to destroy my entire life? What are they saying and what are they reading?
Exactly.
I'd like to know that, you know?
Exactly. And as someone that is skeptical of the line being towed, it's a really valuable resource to be able to pull one of these articles up and learn from what's being said between the lines.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's good that you mentioned that it's a cold medium because I think you need to keep that in mind when engaging with it and engage with it on that same level, right? You need to remove the healthy amount from the content in order to deal with the framing and in order to address that and have that be the main takeaway, to be able to quote unquote read through the lines to a degree. Because it's not very hard to read through the lines. It's not like, you know,
No, it's not.
we've got some sort of like high education in reading the media bullshit or something. No, I mean, regular people, you can read through there and be like, oh, that's just horse shit right here.
Totally.
But it's good to be able to engage with it from that like kind of a cynical distance like that.
What? Yeah, 100%. I mean, the cold and hot mediums, I'm kind of drawn from like Marshall McLuhan there, talking about, you know, you literature, the written word requires the audience to go to it more, requires more from them. And I think that when we're talking just straight up about like propaganda, at the very least, the difference between reading a piece about the shooting in Texas, right? Reading a piece about the shooting in Texas versus watching fucking failed test tube clone Don Lemon talk about the Texas shooting. Like, the article isn't also requiring your brain to like parse through the emotional affect that he's putting on, and all the ways in which that media environment is it's hitting you on 16 more fronts, right? Yeah. So anyway, I mean, this is kind of just a small detail of the point, but I do think that there's value in reading this stuff. And to get back to these specific articles, yeah, fucking robot guy. These articles basically they prop up abject transhumanism pretty uncritically, and I screenshotted a couple quotes that I'm bringing up right now.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, let's hear them.
Because they don't specifically, and this is the whole thing, right? It's not necessarily like, hey, this is all great and we're going to explicitly endorse, but they present it, they present pretty stunningly misanthropic, what I consider misanthropic insights into this topic, and basically just put it up equally against, you know, any old observation, which kind of gives it a sense of credibility. Here we go. All right. I know a person when I talk to it, said Lemoyne. Lemoyne is the guy who, I don't know if you recognize this, but Lemoyne is the guy that got fired from Google.
Yeah.
I know a person when I talk to it, said Lemoyne, who can swing from sentimental to insistent about the AI. It doesn't matter whether they have a brain made of meat in their head or if they have a billion lines of code. I talk to them and I hear what they have to say. And that is how I decide what is and isn't a person. He concluded Lambda was a person in his capacity as a priest, not a scientist, and then tried to conduct experiments to prove it.
Wait, fucking, I didn't catch that part. In his capacity as a priest and not a scientist.
Okay, so I actually should have introed with that also. This guy is like a kind of a raised Christian occultist coder type guy.
Oh, Lord.
I'm going to get to that, by the way, right? I'm going to make a note about that, because that's not specifically what I want to talk about from this passage, but I should have read it to myself ahead of time, dude. We're just going by the seat of our pants here. Point is, meat brain in your head. I know what a person is simply by talking to them. This isn't real, okay?
Yeah.
This isn't real. And I don't like this as a quick, just kind of aesthetic critique of it. I don't like this fucking Reddit thing of like referring to the human form as just like a bag of meat.
God, thank you, dude. That shit gets under my nerves, bro. It's disgusting.
Yeah, so I mean, like, first of all, it's fucking gay and embarrassing, and second, it's really, really sinister and fucked up sounding, and you should stop doing that. And to a lesser degree, I also don't like this like quirky thing that people do where they just like refer to people as like humans, right? And I don't mean like in the like using the word human. I mean like kind of in the tongue in cheek, like I can't even illustrate it very well, but like you know exactly what I'm fucking talking about, and it's I don't fucking like this shit. It's test tube human shit. Okay, you're judging life by its appearance, basically, right? By how it comes across to you, right? I mean, I don't know. I have so much to say about it. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, this is related, obviously, because you brought it up, but about judging life as it occurs to you or as it seems to you. That's always been an argument of mine. Like, I'm generally space skeptical and stuff in general, and of like aliens and stuff like that too. I don't know. I mean, who knows? But if they do exist, you would think that there may be forms of life that we wouldn't recognize as life, because like they wouldn't have the same circumstances as us, etc. But that comes back down to this is what we're saying is that we can't know. You know, I don't think that we have a good concept of really saying, well, this is life and this isn't. And so us being able to just be like, oh, well, it thinks these things, and it has a computing capacity of this, and it has this intellect, this, therefore it must be life, therefore it must be sentient. I think those are very rigid ways of qualifying, you know, vital essence and, you know, the very nature of a being, and of life. And I don't think that that's the proper way to determine what is life and what isn't. With this whole topic itself, it's really frustrating for me because, like you're saying, they're just positing it like a very matter of fact, like this is a thing now, and we just gotta kind of deal with it. It's like, well, the discussion is now, is this thing like a real sentient being, and does it actually have its thoughts and feelings of its own, and should we treat it as such, and should we start thinking about ethical concerns to make sure that we're not trampling on the rights of this? Why are we getting into that, dude? Because we don't need to do that. We can just stop fucking with this kind of shit. We don't need to go there. That's kind of my thought on this in general. Just turn off the computer, bro. Turn off the machines. Like, I don't want to have a discussion about is, you know, what's ethically correct for a computer if it's deemed sentient. Fuck that, dude. Why are we making shit like that in the first place? We don't need to do that.
Well, right, and that's where like I think the actual interesting part about this is that so first of all, I'm just gonna say I don't, because it needs to be said. I don't believe that artificial intelligence, like sentient artificial intelligence, life in that way is possible. I don't believe it is, and fundamentally, I mean, it would have to be. It's a pretty big sell to me, to say that that like it would be possible in some other circumstances in technological environments that are totally foreign to what we have. And maybe I'd be open to it. I really don't think so. But primarily, the reason why there's absolutely no way in hell, to my estimate, that it would be possible is that we've designed the internet and our technological interfaces to be modeled after our structures and forms of thought
Yeah.
that existed before them, right? And that, and the way that we're even conceiving of life in this way and of intelligence in this way, really rooted in Descartes and everything, is fundamentally flawed, right? It's fundamentally flawed in the first place, right? But the real kind of thing I wanted to get to is that, it's like I'm kind of mentioning that because it's just like right out of the gate, I just dismissed the premise offhandedly. Okay. Right. The interesting thing about this whole thing to me is that they're talking about making AIs, right? And I'm gonna refer to things as AIs going forward because AI doesn't necessarily mean something is alive, right? There are AIs that exist, right? AIs being made to mimic humans, human communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they even mention in the article, which I think is also funny because the way they talk about it reifies premises of the regime that already exist, which is they talk about the potential that this has for misinformation, right? And to have people talk, right? And to have people, potentially, oh my gosh, my mother calls me on the phone and asks me to share all of my personal information with her. Well, it turns out that it was some fucking kid in India making a fucking AI voice that sounded like her or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's
What if
interesting.
the AIs are working for Russia? Fuck.
Well, right. There's the actual example, right? But this shit's demonic, right? You're going to create an entity, and it's not alive. I shouldn't even call it an entity. You're going to create something that's going to mimic a human being. You can't tell me a good reason for doing that.
Yeah.
You cannot tell me a good reason for doing that. And when I hear that, that straight up does sound fucking demonic. That sounds like a fucking skinwalker, dude. And that is bad. That is bad. And just even right out of the gate, like starting on that foot, that shouldn't have even been allowed to be developed in the first place.
I think it's important to delineate that when you're saying you shouldn't be able to make something that mimics a human being, at least what I'm taking away is that you shouldn't be able to make an an intelligence, et cetera, that mimics human capacity for thinking, for interacting, that mimics a human being in that way. I think that there is use for like mimicking the human body, like CPR dummies or
well,
that
right,
kind of shit.
I don't think like cardboard cutouts and mannequins are demons. No.
Yeah, no, I know. I was just making sure to wade through that a little bit.
Totally. You know what it kind of reminds me of a little bit, and I don't totally have the brain power right now to totally connect these concepts, but this is making me kind of also think about Aborigines that believe that if your picture is taken, then it'll take a piece of your soul, right? I mean, I kind of think about that concept a little bit more as just like I'm constantly changing, and so then to translate myself into media in a static form is to like limit the potential of my constant change. So if you think about it, for the last 2.5 years with this podcast, we've just been absolutely destroying our souls.
I mean, that's a given, I feel like.
Right. Which is funny that the static nature of being that media imposes on people, I think, is one of the big reasons for why young people are all so uniformly anxious. But anyways, having something specifically mimic, a mannequin it kind of approximates the human form for a very specific purpose, right? To hang clothes off of it, right? Even then, that doesn't stop people from using mannequins. I'm thinking of like Silent Hill as like props that are just like fundamentally unnerving and uncanny and like met with suspicion in like horror, for example, right? when we're talking about, and I'm going to put this forward, and I haven't given this a ton of thought, and so maybe maybe there is an example you can, and a good reason for why you would do this, but you're going to recreate the human form to see how clothing sits on it, right? Totally. What reason is there to recreate a human's capacity for conversation?
Yeah.
I can't think of anything outside of shit that is fundamentally bad.
Yeah, I think that it's like, okay, you might could come up with some reasons, but I don't know that those are like that they're smoking guns at all. And I would say that those reasons are ultimately to address societal ills that come from the dehumanization of just day to day life.
I mean,
And
when you
also,
say that, I immediately I assume you're talking about like fake companionship for the lonely.
yeah, fake companionship, or like, yeah, for people that maybe they need practice talking to somebody or something, like super autistic people, or like what, even that's not helpful. That'll make you more autistic if you're just trying to talk with a computer all day and that's your only experience. And like, or maybe for like mental health issues, for like people in training, like to know how to respond or whatever the fuck. But even that, it's like, we should just like people should just be talking and engaging with each other in their community, and like we shouldn't even be having these societal like quote unquote mental illness issues that we're having. So like those are stemming from another issue, and I don't think that a robot can even really well predict how especially a crazy person's brain would work. So I don't think that that's even a valid reason. And then I don't know, maybe another one would be like engaging with like crisis, like if you're like a someone on the simulation, like a suicide hotline person or like a SWAT team person that gets called in when someone's on the ledge or something.
Why not just have an actor?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing that I could come up with in the time you were talking is just like dementia patients, right? Because somebody, in most cases, somebody with dementia, it's not, we can't really make a through line of being like, we need to, address the fact that this person has, their dementia would go away if they weren't poor or something, right? But you could just have normal people talk to dementia patients,
Yeah.
You just,
Well,
they don't need to talk to fucking Siri,
Yeah, I'm not saying that like, oh, societal ills are causing these and so we shouldn't address them. I'm saying more like what you're saying. Why the fuck isn't there just humans to go talk to them? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why can't we just free up some people to go talk to them? Why don't they have people in their lives already that will be there and be that person for them?
And so this gets to the real pill that I have about this, I think, which is, cybernetics is very real. And the, how do I want to say this? Automatons are like basically completely just all over the fucking place. We're fucking surrounded by them. They're just normal fucking people, right? The fact that just merely like talking to a fucking Duolingo language AI bot, it sells somebody on the idea of their authenticity as a person is actually more than anything just kind of like a damning indictment of just how our society, like factory assembly line, makes the most brain dead, fucking spiritually deadened people.
Yeah. If regular people are becoming indistinguishable from fucking just regular machines, and it's not because the machines are getting any better, it's just because people are just becoming more vapid.
No, exactly. And like, I didn't really go into this conversation necessarily like expecting to talk about automation proper too much, but I will touch on it just to say that, like, what I'm saying here kind of, it reminds me also of just like, I think that automation does get I think technology generally, but automation is a good example, gets overstated a lot of the time because you can just take the shit that's been around forever and just rework it and make it a lot more cost effective and practical.
You
than
mean
create-
you mean it's like productive capabilities or like the effects of technologies and automation?
I'm talking both. Basically what I'm saying in a long-winded way is just like not in there are like a ton of cases where like no, like a robot taking your job is never going to be more cost effective for capitalists than just importing like poorly educated, desperate migrants from other countries to do your job super super cheap, right? And the sexiness of having technology wrapped up in your like explanation doesn't detract from the fact that like it's actually not super realistic that it's going to have this effect, right? And ultimately, yeah, what I'm saying is just that like the most common drone is just a fucking spiritually deadened person with marching orders from mass media uploaded into their head.
Yeah, we've circled around to the normies or the robots take.
Right.
Quickly,
NPCs.
I do like that.
They're
No,
NPCs.
I like that.
Yeah, no, it's true though, right? Like it just makes it's a lot more cost effective to just turn people functionally into robots than it is to actually make a fucking robot. I don't actually know how cutting of a insight that is from me, but
I think it's all one thing, dude. I think it's like those are both two streams that are now converging. Like I think that people are becoming this way in large part because of the effects of technology. Yes. And because of our increased reliance upon them, and because of the things that we are automating away, not specifically jobs, but thought processing.
Yes.
Or just like memory recall is a big one. Really anything like that. Like we're trusting like our Facebook to give us our memories of a year ago today.
Yeah,
that's 3 months ago today.
Totally. Like I think it's less about like industrial organizing and more it's less about like production and it's more about like individual person's conditioning. And I'll even just say like, yeah, like we're more reliant on technology, but like on an individual basis, like, you know, having Facebook remind you of your memories from 2 years ago, like people just have the illusion of being reliant on that. You don't need any of that fucking shit at all.
No, you don't need it. But when people are using it and actively engaging in it in such a way, and they're using all sorts of TikTok or other social media,
it creates a reliance.
General media, yeah, the deluge wears you down. It creates a reliance, and it makes it to where the goldfish memory is okay. Like it makes it more functional to have less of a memory base, less of a capability for reasoning, for intellectual thought, and for just like attention. You know what I mean? It's like you're just going to assume that your phone's going to remind you about something or whatever, and it's not that you're just going to assume it and that people can't just remember on their own anymore. But these things are slow processes that just eat away and they take a little bit more each day. And when you are constantly, I'll just use Google to look something up. It's like the boomer thing about calculators, bro. Boomers telling you not to use calculators for like basic math and stuff like that because it'll make you so you're slower with your basic math and addition reasoning. It's fucking true.
I mean, this is like what people said like way back in the day, just about like the written word too. And the ultimate pill is that they might have actually been sort of right
about writing shit down too. Makes people worse at communicating.
Yeah, and just of memory and everything. If you're writing yourself little memos. And
yeah, I think man, that could get into a whole other discussion about the power of the word and the written word, etc. That we can maybe save.
Well, that I feel like that's
of episodes.
I feel like that's like the real like root primitivist shit to talk about right there, right? Is just being like, fuck the modern world, fuck technology, and like language is a fucking technology that is exerting its will on humanity. This is William Burroughs shit.
Yeah,
right?
that's true because it does frame the way that you think to a degree, right? If you don't have the words to think of a certain thing, it's harder to really conceptualize that thought.
Last episode, I compared someone we were talking about to the plot of Assassin's Creed, and now in this episode, I'm going to compare it to Metal Gear Solid, where in Metal Gear Solid 5, there's a virus that goes around and is infecting people, and it's language based, right? So this language is how this virus is spread.
Man, I'm thinking about Idiocracy right now. Because I'm thinking about how they have just like the dumbest language of all time, and they're dumb people too.
Right. Well, it's like
that goes hand in hand, but
yeah. Then that gets into right like Orwellian newspeak, right? You limit people's pool of language because that limits their capacity for thinking too, right? Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the normie thing that everybody talks about is that Inuits have, a fuck ton of words for snow, right? Because of course they would, because the fucking conditions that they exist in that formed their language necessitate a need for a ton of fucking words for the concept of snow that I don't fucking need because
you barely deal with it.
Yeah, it's fucking snow, dude. Who gives a shit?
It's just some white shit. Makes everything miserable for a few days.
Yeah, what's the deal with this white shit? I don't care.
Yeah, man, so to get back to the AI thing, I think that I do, or at least to get back to the automation thing, which is, I guess, all tied into the AI. I think that I do kind of diverge from you a little bit as far as thinking that the impact or the possible capabilities of AI or of automation is overstated. I think that to a degree, you're right. Like, I think that there are people who are sold on the promise of this, like, super functional, very savvy technological future where everything is brought to you by robots and everything is done in this way and it's very clean and it's very orderly and just kind of runs on a dime. I don't really think that is what's going to happen. I don't know that we have the productive capabilities to do that. I think that technologically we are, when it comes to making actual functional devices for carrying out productive capabilities, I think that we're losing our spark in that. I think that we are kind of transferring from the making of productive forces and machines to like making things that kind of like the AI they're productive on a different realm. It's productive in the digital world. It's productive in the land of ideas and that kind of thing, more so than like just dollars and figures or nuts and bolts way. I do think that automation has already taken jobs, and it will continue to do so. I also think that I don't see why, like you said, that there'll never be a time when it's more cost effective to replace you with the robot really than just like some super poor person from Bangladesh or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, with the governments that we have in place, although they're not worker friendly and whatever, we do have certain protections in place. And then you say, yeah, but if you bring in illegal immigrants, then they're not in the same protections or whatever. But there are still certain like workplace conditions that have to be upheld as an overall that take dollars and figures and logistics to work out, and there are still appearances that have to be upheld that wouldn't necessarily be the same if it's just like a room full of computers. And also, it would be more cost effective. Like if you're, let's just say someone who's taking orders at a McDonald's or someone who's bagging groceries or
easily
someone
replaced.
those things you can easily replace those, and it would be cost effective to replace with a screen with the computer program on there that takes, it's probably energy efficient or whatever, so it takes low energy, so you're not running up electrical bills or whatever. You don't have to pay them anything. That is more cost effective than even getting in someone that's going to work for undercutting labor. So in jobs like that, it's undeniable that there is a real loss of humans losing their jobs to automation. Now,
but what
are
I'm
those productive jobs?
Part of what I'm saying, though, just as a side note, is that I don't think that like it's that hard to come up with an example of menial unskilled labor that like is just like not super well suited to AI. Like I don't think it's that hard, right? Like a person can be replaced by a vending machine, you know, really easily. But like a line cook is
Yeah.
not
Oh, of
replaced by a
course.
machine all that easily. And the fact is like there's a shitload of jobs like that. There are a
Mhm.
shitload of jobs like that because there are things, and it doesn't need to be super complicated tasks. There are just certain things that like a machine and engineering just isn't that good at dealing with, right?
Yeah.
Not least of which being like, you know, going up fucking stairs. Now, like
Mhm.
you can make a fucking robot that goes upstairs pretty fucking easily, but can you make one to satisfy the needs of an economy of scale
Yeah.
at a super cost effective, way? Not really, right? Yeah. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah,
Continue.
no, I agree with you there. And I guess that's kind of where what I was trying to parse out here is where, because you made it when you said it, it was somewhat of a blanket kind of thing, and of course there's nuance, right? Of course, I was just kind of trying to get in here and figure out what that nuance is because yeah, I agree. Like even the type of job that I do, it's not a highly skilled labor, but like just the very nature of the mechanics involved and everything like that, like. I don't think that it would be effective to. I definitely don't think that they right now have the capability to build a robot that would be able to go through all the range of motions that I go through, the processes of identification, of mental processes that didn't happen, to do what to do with the things that you encounter, etc. I don't think that it would be cost effective to make a robot, especially right now under our technological things, that could do that job. So
Yes.
even a job like I have, which is not you know, moving and shaking anything or whatever, it would be difficult to automate and to a point where it's like it wouldn't even ever be useful, really. But I mean, there are other types of industries that I can think of that would be, you could pretty easily automate the whole thing away. And also, I mean, shit, one thing I was thinking about is think about all the email jobs, dude. You could just automate all that shit away because they're fake jobs in the first place, bro. Like most of them are just like it's just data compilation and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, you could make an AI that would probably
Actually, when you
do
put it
this
like
kind of
that,
stuff.
I'm ravenously in support of automating as much of our economy.
Yeah,
as we
well, let's
possibly
get
can.
that shit out of the way for sure. Automate all that bullshit. Go ahead and automate all desk jobs. You know what? Fuck it. I want to abolish HR, but that's never going to happen. So automate HR and let's just go ahead and speed up the process of the
Well,
bullshit.
to be fair though, I feel like automating HR is exactly how you get like a fucking like extinction event fucking
Yeah.
causing AI that
Uh-huh.
just like nukes the entire planet. It's just like having it take over for some just like rotund broad who lives in her fucking apartment and just like polices your language over Slack.
Yeah. No, they start getting real power hungry then the AIs. They be getting crazy. And also, I mean, let's think about the fact that HR is human resources and I mean, it's already a very cold and a very uh, basically just like anti-worker
More like
establishment.
inhuman resources.
Yeah, it's literally an inhuman industry, and so yeah, it's I think that if you were to put computers in charge of it, yeah, that would be fucked up. But effectively, what we're doing is
It'd be
putting
the same thing,
computers. We're putting computers in charge of all of this shit effectively,
Uh-huh.
anyways. Like
Because
we're letting.
you're talking about, and this is the fucking CCRU pill, fucking Landian shit, is that HR, company politics, things like that, they're effectively AIs already, right?
Yes.
Modernity
Yes.
is made up by a bunch of positive feedback loops that just
Yes.
that are AI, right? The real thing that people are talking about when they use AI as a shorthand is like sentient life, right?
Yeah.
But AI is all the fuck around us, and fucking company policy and HR departments are a reasonably good example of kind of what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay, so that's you delineating those two things there. That's big because yeah, I'm not worried about like sentient AI cuz I just flat out don't believe that's anything. Like I will never believe that a
I don't think
robot
it's possible.
is any type of sentient conscious life. I will never believe it because it's not, and I will not even entertain the concept of it because it's some foul creation of human hands, and it is driven. All of this has been driven and created by a profit incentive that has been pretty much just baked into everything. It's been basically capital is just kind of at the helm here, and that's what's driven all these artificial intelligences, right? That's what's creating all these things. And so in that sense, I view it as something that is inhuman, and that could never be sentient conscious life in that way.
Okay,
And I would never view it that way. But
about it like-
AIs I am concerned with.
Totally. Think about it like this, right? Think about it like this. I don't care if your mom is a crack whore and she fucking, gets rid of you the second she gives birth to you or whatever. You are grown inside of a living person, right? There's the warmth of that. There is the world filtered through those layers of another person around you. There's fundamentally some kind of practical love inherent in that, the way I see it.
Mm-hmm.
And now think about what these AIs that we're basically talking about would have as their version of that, which is the womb, the ideological womb of basically just capitalist imperatives of production.
Yes.
That's horrifying. And that's a fucking Lovecraftian creature that you've created.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want that. You don't want a fucking void of ever expanding production in place of the warmth of a womb to be the conditions in which you're spawning the species that will succeed you or something, right? Like,
yeah,
no, not at all. And I say that specifically, by the way, just because I don't necessarily think that it's impossible for and this is like totally heretical, but like, I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's impossible for a species to author another species of intelligent, sentient life, right? I don't necessarily think that that's impossible, and I don't really think that has to. I don't think that has to invalidate the existence of God as the creator of existence. I think it just adds a couple extra steps, right? Robots, the way we're talking about them, and again, the way I'm talking about just like the environments we've created in which we deal with computers and all of that, that cannot produce life. That will not produce life ever.
Yeah, and the fundamental nature of it being, like you were talking about, that it's birth of, purely out of these feedback loops, this like capital imperative for production, for profit, for consuming and moving, is wholly different than where life comes from. Now one could say that this, I guess, would get into maybe a philosophical debate of maybe that capital could be seen in some degree as analogous to like the will to live.
Right. The spread and expansion.
Yeah, exactly. But I would say that it's something that's different altogether, because it's something that, as conscious beings, we're able to view as separate. Whereas, like, the beasts in the field, they act basically just upon, their own nature. They act just upon the grace of God that he's been endowed within them, their own, bestial grace. Well, that's what they operate on.
Well, and I'll even insist that's still several orders of magnitude higher than how we're constituting life maybe existing within capital. Because if we're just saying that it's defined by just having the drive to recreate yourself, to propagate, that's not like my dog. My dog has more than that. That's like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lichen on the stick that he just picked up this morning. You know,
Mhm.
like we're describing fungus.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, you know, that's. I mean, how much distance is there between a mold and a house cat? Right, a whole lot, in ways that I don't even think anyone living today could probably even uh, comprehend.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say that. Man, I saw this documentary about fungus. That's on Netflix. It's like a popular one. I don't remember what it's called. Something about it might just be called fungus or mushrooms or I don't fucking know. But
Mm.
man, there is some crazy shit with like mycelium and with fungus and like with fungal networks, the way that they connect other like the way that fungal networks essentially connect the roots of trees within a forest and they can kind of send messaging and information
Hmm.
tree from tree to tree through mycelium and through those networks because of electrical impulses, etc., stuff like that. It's fucking crazy. And
Oh, you go ahead.
sorry, go
Sorry.
on. The
Oh
way
no.
that fungus operates is almost like it is operating with a sense of consciousness to some degree or another.
Yeah, I mean, like think about fucking. We're getting to the fucking cordyceps pill, dude. Fucking fungus that infects a infect. I don't even know. Fungus that gets itself lodged into the nervous system of an ant, and then in order to eat it, has controls the ant to go and jump
Oh,
off a high place and kill itself.
yeah.
Fucking
So
zombie fungus, right?
there's some really crazy shit like that. But here's the thing: even fungus itself is a natural product. It's not just like fungus wasn't created under the uh, necessary like drive of capital. It wasn't created in order to do anything other than just be fungus. Like fungus is
Mhm.
just fungus. It was created by God, or it was just whatever it
Oh,
is.
we
It's
can, we can just
fungus.
stop there. Yeah, it was created by God.
Yeah, it was created by God, and it wasn't created by just some people who were trying to make some fucking money. And so, therefore, it's on completely different levels, and it can never be equated. Like, fungus is to me definitely more of a sentient being than any fucking robot ass bullshit ever will be.
Right.
Because I think that fundamentally that the universe is conscious, and I think that everything within it has differing levels of that consciousness. And I think that ultimately comprises like I'm saying universe, but ultimately it's God, and these things are interchangeable for me a lot of the time because they're not really set concrete concepts. I'm not talking about dude with a white beard, whatever.
I mean,
Um,
that's what I mean. It's funny you said that because I was thinking the other day, having a conversation with somebody, that like most people just use most people these days say the universe, and like a few decades ago they would have just said God, and
yeah.
it's basically the same word. Like they're
hmm
using it the same way, but people just don't don't think of that.
And it's different because of the connotations and the
Well, of
ways
course,
that
it's
the
all
concepts were
connotation.
delivered to us, right? Like the concept of the universe has been delivered to us through the stringent and rigid framing of scientism. And so in many cases when like someone's using the universe as a replacement for God, it's more of like a secular stand-in that is meant to when ultimately it's ultimately speaking to the same concepts, but it's just trying to like it's taking the mysticism, it's taking the faith out of the picture.
Exactly.
um
Well, and I think the big thing, it's a sleight of hand trick. The big thing that it accomplishes is that it elevates a much less human centric view of reality,
mm-hmm.
which is like literally just bad for culture.
Yeah.
I think that I think that people kind of talk out of the side of their mouth when they talk about how like, oh man, I wouldn't want to have the hubris to think that the world exists around all of us, but like there's social utility to like having baked into our language a human centric view of the cosmos.
I mean, of course, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to be able to hold both of those things, right? Like, I think you need to be able to have a healthy sense of knowing that as humans, we are not God. We are not gods. We don't control everything, and we don't need to go out and make things in our image and of that sort, right? Like that is an unhealthy externality of a human centric mode of being, of like a humanism or whatever, right? But I think that within a cosmological understanding of our reality, you absolutely need to have just for the nature of it. You need to be able to delineate humans as a higher class of being than the other things around us because of the simple fact that we are strapped with consciousness. And not just consciousness to the level of like I was saying, maybe fungus has a certain level of consciousness in a way or another, but consciousness in the sense that like we have the ability to sit here, really chew on these ideas, to flesh out these concepts, and then to act upon them in ways that can alter the nature of reality around us, that can alter material reality around us, which then can have an effect, uh, broader from there, and that we have the power of creation endued to us through God, and that it's not so that we can go out and try to be masters of our own destiny and masters of the universe and gain this intense hubris that we need to keep in check, but
Mhm.
rather so that we can work in harmony with God's plan, in harmony with the natural goodness of the universe,
Mhm.
etc., that kind of thing, as stewards essentially of everything else that does exist around us.
Mhm.
And that is the human centric view that I think is most healthy. Is that like we're stewards here in this universe, in this vast and unfathomable universe, really. But we do have the capability to pin some things down. We have the capability to form matter into ways that are beneficial for us, and we have
Mhm.
the ability to create. And we should, in all that we can, try to use those abilities to be in harmony with the divine being, the divine ground of reality.
True reality, ultimate reality. I think, I think, I think that the part of God that exists in everything and in us is this infinite mystery that exists in everyone,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that that would specifically be at the end of the day, if you're cutting back everything that I can think of with a machete of what would constitute life or not life. I think that the presence of infinity in a person um, is the thing that I would settle
Yes.
on, and I think that fundamentally, if you have an AI which is made up of global neural networks that have been built by 15 years of everyone on the planet Earth inputting information from their iPhones all over the place, and it's building up and it's building up and it's building up and it's making all these dendritic connections between information and concepts, and that is the pool of matter, I guess, that is creating this this being that's not infinite. That's fundamentally not
Yes.
infinite. That is drawing from a pool of which the spigot was turned on 15 years ago when everyone got a fucking iPhone and their data started getting farmed. Talking like a fucking retard. And it's fundamentally not infinite, and it
Yes.
comes down to it's a perfect representation, and this is the philosophical technology of it. It's a perfect representation of this worldview, of this fucking measure tard worldview where everything's going to be quantified and everything's going to be measured and put into a little box and sorted, and everything can be thought through, and it's not real, and it's bloodless, and
Mm-hmm.
a fully measurable life form intelligence is a counterfeit. And so I do think, yes, like at the end of the day, when you talk about like how complicated eye movements and eye contact cues and all that stuff are, right? um, I think that there's something like beyond just a really complicated matrix of eye movements and things like that. I think that like you're looking into infinity when you're looking into another person's eyes, and you're knowing their soul in a real way that's beyond just like talking about what was on SNL last night. I think that there's an unknowability in people that is a piece of God or the cosmos, if we want to use like secular language. Um, and yes, and I think that I think that if we were to create actual honest to God life, then we would have needed to, as like a prerequisite, we would have needed to reach a final form of existence where we have like achieved a oneness with the rest of an ultimate reality or with
Yes.
God. And so then we would become the unknowable. We would become the paradox. And then, and then whatever we would create would honestly be able to have something without a true end that would, or a true beginning point that would make it finite and measurable.
Yeah, it would have to be like the third period in Taoism, where you reach like an actual knowing of the divine ground of being, oneness with it, essentially. Which, of course, we're nowhere fucking close to, and no individual can be there alone, right? And well, unless you're Jesus. And so it's like, I don't know. Man, I think we need to reject the cold and calculating rational mindset of knowing, and we need to embrace the ineffable mystery.
Yes.
We need to embrace the unknowable magnificence of everything. The splendid glory and perfect majesty of the ineffable around us, because it is exactly as it should be. It's everything is quote unquote in its right place, and we can't just put things around in their right place and hope for it to go right, because we are the very things that are being moved around. And so yeah, you I don't know, whenever, if it's a human, like you're saying, this AI thing, it's a pool that was created 15 years ago and it's just by data mining. Well, guess what? Every single thing that it's mined have been the thoughts of humans, and have been how humans have engaged with concepts, and those are concepts that were created by humans, etc., etc. And humans, as we just said, cannot know the absolute divine nature or ground of being in its entirety. And so yeah, of course it's always going to be a limited form, and it will never contain within it that infiniteness. It will never contain within it that inextricable just unknowing.
At the very best, it would be this like kind of new thing of being like a singular voice representing the collective unconscious. But even then, it wouldn't even be like proper representation, because again, to go back to like a McLuhan kind of insight, all of those little inputs by people into the neural network are formed by the media environment that they're expressed in.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you think about memes, and certain memes are a lot more popular on certain platforms and other platforms, and that you're making the same joke because you're playing to the audience on this particular platform, or reacting to the limitations and the boundaries set by this platform. And it fundamentally affects the content of what's being expressed, right? The average television show, when you're writing the script, you're taking into consideration the fact that there's going to be X amount of commercial breaks, and that's informing the content of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, and you're taking into account the medium as well. So like not you were talking about the specifics of the medium with the commercial breaks, but also just like just everything else that it entails, and the audience and how they are receiving it. And
100%. It is the medium, right? Right. We're talking about the medium as the message right now, and the whole. Oh God, what was that? What was the example that he would give of when they started televising football? Certain plays, the game becomes different when you're
Mhm.
fucking
Oh, yeah.
playing for television cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the medium is the message.
All right, that was part 1 of our episode. If you'd like to listen to part 2, you can find that at patreon.com/fedpost. Thanks for listening.